The hall is alive with color, perfume, and the quiet thunder of ambition. 10 noble daughters from 10 different kingdoms stand in a perfect line, each one polished to a shine by the hands of mothers, handmaidens, and high-ranking officials who spent months preparing for this single moment. Their gowns catch the light like cut glass, sapphire, ivory, emerald, rose gold, every hem pressed, every curl placed, every smile rehearsed until it no longer looks rehearsed. The organizer, Lord Drevian, a thin, nervous man with a red sash across his chest, moves along the line making final adjustments, a collar straightened here, a veil lifted there. He has worked 2 years to assemble this lineup, 2 years to ensure that only the finest, the most suitable, the most acceptable women stand in this hall today. Everything is perfect. Everything is controlled. Everything is exactly as it should be. Then the main doors open. Count Cassivian of Valemore enters without announcement. He needs none. The room knows. The air shifts the moment he crosses the threshold, tall, unhurried, dressed in all black against the sea of color before him. His eyes move across the line of brides the way a man reads a page he has already read before, politely, patiently, without surprise. Lord Drivian rushes forward with a practiced bow and begins his introduction. My Lord Count, may I present the 10 noble daughters selected from across the 5 kingdoms. But Cassivian is no longer listening. He has stopped walking. His eyes have found something at the far edge of the hall. There, standing completely apart from the lineup, not in it, not near it, is a girl. No gown of jeweled silk. No handmaiden adjusting her hair, no high official whispering last instructions in her ear. She stands alone in a simple dress the color of deep earth, her dark skin luminous in the gold light pouring through the tall windows. She is not performing. She is not smiling at him. She is not even sure she should be looking, but she is quietly, the way a person looks at something they are trying to understand. She is the only still thing in a room full of motion. And Cassivian cannot look away. He takes one slow step toward her, then another. The 10 noble brides watch in stunned silence as the man they have crossed kingdoms for walks, past them without a word. He raises one hand, a single calm gesture, beckoning her forward. The girl's breath catches. Her lips part slightly. She takes one small step. Lord Drevian materializes between them like a wall. My lord. His voice is low, urgent, a controlled panic wrapped in silk. Forgive the interruption. That girl is not part of the competition. She has no standing here. She was not selected. She does not belong in this line.
Cassivian looks at him, just looks at him.
The silence that follows is the loudest thing in the room. I did not ask where she belongs, he says quietly. I asked her to come forward. He turns back to the girl. The entire hall holds its breath.
If you watch this story up to this moment, do well to like, share, and subscribe to this new growing channel, as it encourages the creator and helps the channel to grow. Welcome.
Chapter 1. The town of Selwick wakes up the same way every day, loudly and without apology. Market traders drag their carts across cobblestones. Children chase each other between the legs of adults who are too busy to notice. Smoke rises from bakehouse chimneys. Horses complain. Dogs bark at nothing. The whole place smells of bread, manure, and ambition in roughly equal measure. It is by any measure an ordinary town. And in an ordinary town, an ordinary girl carries 2 buckets of water up a hill before the sun has fully decided to rise. Her name is Zephyran. She does not walk slowly. She has never been allowed to. The Mortevel house is large enough to suggest old money, and cluttered enough to confirm that the money ran out some time ago. What remains is the furniture, the reputation, and Lady Vondra Mortevel. A woman who has spent 15 years replacing substance with performance and doing it so well that most people in Selwick cannot tell the difference. Zephyrin sets the buckets down by the hearth and immediately reaches for the iron pot. She knows the morning routine the way she knows her own heartbeat. By necessity, by repetition, by the quiet understanding that if she does not do it, no one will do it for her. She is 18. Her skin is deep and dark and beautiful in the way that candlelight is beautiful, warm, and completely unaware of itself. Her hair is thick and natural, pinned back with a single cloth strip because there was no one to teach her anything more. Her dress is clean but old, the hem repaired so many times that the repairers have their own repairs. She does not look like someone who has been broken. She looks like someone who was never given the luxury of breaking. The sound of shrieking laughter tumbles down the staircase like something thrown. Mira, Mira, the green one. I said the green one. Isolde Mortevel appears at the top of the stairs. 17 years old, ivory-skinned, honey-haired, and radiating the particular energy of a girl who has never once been told no and has built her entire personality around that fact. She holds two gowns against herself alternately, spinning in front of a mirror that Zephyrin polished this morning. Lady Vondra stands behind her, eyes narrowed in the focused, calculating way of a woman conducting a military operation disguised as motherly love. The green, Vondra confirms, smoothing Isolde's hair with a proprietary hand. It makes your eyes look like jewels, and jewels are what men like Cassivian notice first. Isolde grins. And what do they notice second? Everything else we have already planned. Vondra allows herself one small private smile. Now stand straight. A girl who slouches is a girl who doubts herself, and we do not doubt ourselves. Neither of them looks at the staircase. Neither of them notices Zephyrin at the bottom of it, holding a breakfast tray, waiting to be acknowledged. She waits a full minute. Then she sets the tray on the side table quietly and walks back to the kitchen. The announcement is already the talk of the household. Mira, the young housemaid, chatters about it while peeling turnips with more enthusiasm than accuracy. They say he'll choose before the winter moon. Count Cassivian himself in person, right there in the Grand Hall of Valemore, 10 girls, 10 kingdoms. And he picks one. She sighs the way only a 15-year-old can sigh, completely, with her whole body. Can you imagine Zephyrin being chosen like that? Zephyrin is quiet for a moment. Her hands do not stop working. I imagine it feels like being looked at, she says finally, simply, without bitterness. Properly looked at, Mira blinks. Before she can respond, the kitchen door swings open, and Vondra sweeps in, holding a rolled parchment. The official competition announcement, stamped with the Valemore seal, which she has somehow already obtained before half the town has eaten breakfast. Applications close in 3 days, she announces, setting it on the table without looking at Zephyrin. Isolde will need her measurements taken today, and her skin treatment tonight. And her hair, I want it done twice. Once to clean, once to set. She turns to leave, then stops. Oh, and Zephyrin, the east courtyard needs sweeping. Both sides. She is gone before the sentence finishes landing. Zephyrin looks at the parchment on the table. She reads it slowly, completely, every word. Her eyes do not rush. She reads it again. Zephyrin stands in a line she was not supposed to join. The application queue stretches the length of the square. Girls from Selwick and the surrounding villages, daughters of merchants and minor nobles, each holding their paperwork with both hands like something precious. They are all colors of nervous. They have all clearly been prepared by someone. Zephyrin prepared herself. She wrote her own application by candlelight after the house went to sleep, using the last of a pen she found in the waste bin. She has no official seal, no family endorsement, no patron's signature. She has her name, her age, and 3 sentences about who she is, written in the clearest, most careful hand she could manage. She holds it to her chest and waits. The woman behind her taps her shoulder. Zephyrin turns. 3 girls stand together, powdered, pressed, and looking at her the way people look at something they cannot immediately categorize and have already decided they do not like. You're in the wrong queue, the tallest one says. Not unkindly enough to be called cruel, exactly unkindly enough to make the point. This is the application queue, Zephyrin says, for the Count's selection. The girl's eyes travel up and down Zephyrin slowly. You understand what that means? He is choosing a companion, a future countess, to stand beside him. A small pause, deliberate as a knife placement. Not behind him, the other 2 laugh. The kind of laugh designed to sound like it isn't laughing at anything in particular. Zephyrin turns back around. She does not respond. She has learned over 18 years that some people interpret your silence as defeat and others interpret it as dignity. She has also learned she cannot control which one they choose. She stays in the line. The registration officer barely looks up when Zephyrin reaches the front. She slides her application across the desk. He picks it up the way you pick up something you already intend to put back down. He reads it. His expression does not change, which is somehow worse than if it had. No patron's signature, he says. I have none. No noble endorsement. I have none. No kingdom affiliation. I am from Selwick. He sets the paper down, folds his hands over it, looks at her for the first and only time. The selection process, he says carefully, requires that all applicants be formally endorsed by a recognized house, kingdom, or official body. Without endorsement, he slides the paper back across the desk toward her. There is no application. Zephyrin looks at her paper, looks at him. Is that the rule? She asks. Or is that what you have decided for me specifically? His jaw tightens slightly. Good day, he says. Zephyrin stands outside on the steps, her rejected application in her hand. Around her, girls are coming out clutching acceptance receipts, grabbing each other's arms, squealing into each other's shoulders. She watches them. Then she folds her application carefully, not crumpling it, not throwing it, and places it in the small cloth pouch at her waist. She looks up at the sky for a moment. Something passes across her face that is not quite sadness and not quite resolution. It is something quieter than both. Then she turns and walks back toward the Mortevel house. She hears it before she rounds the corner. Isolde's voice, bright and carrying. She actually went? She actually stood in the queue? More laughter. Zéphirine stops walking. She does not hide. She simply stops. With what application? Isolde continues, performing the story for the two friends lounging on the parlor chairs. Who endorsed her? Who even knows her name? The Count will be selecting from princesses, and she showed up like... Isolde gestures vaguely at nothing, the way you gesture at something too ridiculous to need describing. Vondra is sitting in the corner, pretending to read. She embarrassed this household, Vondra says, quietly enough to sound restrained. That reflects on us. On Isolde. She's nothing to do with Isolde, one of the friends says. She lives in this house. Vondra closes her book. Which means whatever she does, people associate with what comes out of this house. And what comes out of this house? She looks toward the corridor where Zéphirine stands, and I must be controlled. Zéphirine steps into the doorway. The room goes briefly, fractionally quiet. Your dinner is on the table, Zéphirine says. To all of them, it will go cold. She walks away first. She is wearing a gray servant's uniform and carrying a silver tray when she walks through the servants' entrance of Valemore Castle for the first time. Lord Dravian's household needed additional staff for the selection ceremony. Someone in the Mortevel circle arranged it without thinking twice about who they were sending. They needed hands. Zéphirine had hands. Around her, servants bustle with last-minute preparations. She moves through them without drawing attention, setting tables, arranging flowers, carrying things from one place to another, with the quiet efficiency of someone who has spent 18 years being useful without being seen. She pauses once, at the entrance to the grand hall. She looks through the gap in the door at the 10 noble daughters being arranged in their perfect line. She sees the sapphire gowns and the pearl collars and the mothers making final adjustments. She sees Isolde near the center of the line. The green dress, the honey hair, exactly as rehearsed. Zéphirine watches for one long moment, then a senior servant bumps her shoulder and tells her to keep moving. She keeps moving. She does not see herself as someone this story belongs to. Not yet. Zéphirine stands at the far edge of the hall, holding an empty tray, watching the room breathe. The noble daughters perform their stillness. The officials murmur to each other. Lord Dravian sweats elegantly into his red sash, and Zéphirine, forgotten, unselected, uninvited, stands in her gray dress in a room full of color, completely alone. And completely, absolutely still. The main doors open. Chapter 2, the horn sounds twice. That is all the warning anyone gets. The noble daughters straighten simultaneously, like flowers snapping towards sunlight, and the entire hall rearranges itself in the space of 3 seconds. Chins lift, shoulders pull back. Smiles are located and deployed. Lady Vondra, standing behind the designated family viewing area, grips her embroidered purse with both hands and runs her eyes over Isolde one final time. The green dress, the perfect curls, the rehearsed poise. She allows herself one small breath of satisfaction. Everything is in place. Everything is ready. The doors open. Count Cassivian of Valemore enters the way a storm enters. Not loudly, but with the unmistakable sense that the atmosphere has fundamentally changed. He is tall, broad-shouldered, dressed entirely in black with a single silver chain across his collar. No excess, no performance. He does not look like a man who has come to be impressed. He looks like a man who has come to make a decision and would rather it be over quickly. He is also, undeniably, the most arresting person who has ever walked into this room. Lord Dravian materializes at his side immediately, bowing at an angle so severe it appears medically unwise, and begins speaking in the low, rapid tone of a man who has rehearsed this moment many more times than he will ever admit. My Lord Count, welcome to the selection of Valemore. 10 noble daughters, representing 10 kingdoms across the 5 regions, each vetted, each endorsed, each presenting herself today as a candidate worthy of your distinguished consideration. Cassivian is not listening. He is looking at the line. The noble daughters do what they have been trained to do. Princess Thessaly of Aranmoor tilts her head at a precise angle that catches the light from the eastern windows. Her mother told her that angle 300 times over the past month. Lady Fennec of Braswell laughs at something her neighbor whispers, the laugh perfectly timed and perfectly pitched, warm without being undignified. Isolde steps forward by exactly half a step. Not enough to break formation, just enough to separate herself from the women beside her, just enough to say, "Look here," without appearing to say anything at all. Vandra trained her for that half step. 3 weeks of training for half a step. Cassivian's eyes move along the line without urgency. Politely, patiently. The way a man looks at things he has already made peace with not wanting. He reaches the end of the line. He keeps looking. And then, slowly, with the complete certainty of a man who has just found the only interesting thing in an overfull room, his gaze moves past the line entirely, past the officials, past the flowers and the gold silk and the marble and everything that has been arranged specifically to hold his attention. It moves to the far edge of the hall. It finds Zéphyrine. She is not doing anything remarkable. That is perhaps the most remarkable thing about her. While every other woman in the room is performing, even in the smallest, most delicate ways, Zéphyrine is simply standing, tray at her side, eyes forward, her dark skin catching the late afternoon light that pours through the tall western window behind her in a way that makes her look less like a servant and more like something someone painted a very long time ago and never quite got credit for. She is not aware he is looking at her, and then suddenly she is. Their eyes meet across the full length of the hall. She does not smile. She does not look away. She holds his gaze for one unguarded second, not because she is brave, but because she is startled. And in that 1 second, something passes between them that has no name in Lord Drevian's carefully prepared ceremony notes. Cassivian raises one hand, a single unhurried gesture, beckoning her forward. The hall does not gasp. It does something worse. It goes utterly, completely, dangerously silent. Zéphyrine breath catches. She looks behind her instinctively, certain, the way she has always been certain in rooms like this, that the gesture cannot be meant for her. But there is no one behind her, only the wall, only the window, only the light. She looks back at him. He is still waiting. She takes one step forward. Lord Drevian moves. He crosses the hall with a speed that is almost impressive for a man of his age and dignity, inserting himself between Zéphyrine and the Count with the practiced smoothness of someone who has spent a career managing inconvenient situations. His smile is enormous and means nothing. "My Lord Count." His voice is soft, careful, the voice of a man diffusing something. "1,000 apologies. That girl is not part of our selection. She is serving staff, brought in for the ceremony. She holds no endorsement, no noble standing. She was not approved for consideration. She is not," he lowers his voice further, as though the next word requires discretion. "She is not a candidate." Cassivian looks at him. Not with anger, not with irritation, with something far more unsettling, complete, unruffled calm. "I did not ask her standing," he says. His voice is quiet and carries anyway, the way quiet voices do in silent rooms. "I asked her to come forward."
Yes, my lord, but the rules of the selection clearly state Lord Drevian.
Drevian stops. "Are you explaining my own rules to me?" A pause. A long one. "No, my lord." Cassivian looks past him, back to Zéphyrine. And for the first time since he entered the room, something almost imperceptible shifts in his expression. Not quite a smile, but the earliest ancestor of one. "Come forward," he says again. To her. Only to her. The noble daughters are no longer performing. They are staring. Princess Thessaly has forgotten the angle entirely. Lady Fennec's warm laugh has evaporated. Isolde, perfect, prepared, half-stepped Isolde, is standing completely rigid, the green dress suddenly feeling very loud in a room that has gone very quiet. Her eyes fixed on the gray uniformed girl at the edge of the hall, with an expression that is trying very hard to be contempt and is failing to fully conceal the panic underneath it. Vandra has stopped gripping her purse. She is gripping the railing. Her eyes move from Cassivian to Zéphyrine and back again, calculating rapidly. The way a woman calculates when something she did not plan for has just walked into the center of her plan. Her jaw is set, her breathing is controlled. Anyone watching her would say she looks composed. Anyone who knew her would know she is furious. "What is she doing?" Isolde says, barely moving her lips in the direction of no one. "Stand still," Vandra says back, also barely moving her lips. "Smile." "Do not look at her, mother." "Smile, Isolde." Zéphyrine walks forward. She does not rush. She does not perform. She walks the way she carried water up a hill before sunrise, steadily, because stopping is not an option she has ever been able to afford. The hall watches her cross it. Every step is witnessed. Every step is, in its own way, an act of extraordinary courage that she herself does not fully recognize as courage. because she has spent her whole life simply continuing to move through rooms that did not want her in them. She stops a respectful distance from the Count. She keeps her eyes level. Her hands are still. Cassivian looks at her the way he did not look at a single woman in that line, not cataloging, not assessing, simply looking, as though she is something that deserves to be looked at properly, and he intends to do exactly that, regardless of how long it takes or who is watching. "What is your name?" he asks. The question lands in the silence like a stone in water, simple, devastating in its simplicity. Because in this hall, on this day, surrounded by 10 introduced, announced, formally presented noble daughters, he is asking her name, hers. The girl with no endorsement, the girl with no patron. The girl in the gray dress who was not supposed to be standing here at all. She lifts her chin slightly. "Zephyrin," she says. He repeats it, not loudly, only to himself, as though testing the weight of it. The way a person repeats a word they intend to remember. Then he nods once, slowly, and he does not look away. Lord Drevian stands to the side, his enormous smile completely gone now, watching the scene unfold, with the hollow expression of a man watching his 2 years of careful preparation quietly catch fire. Behind the railing, Vandra releases the railing at last. She smooths her dress once, straightens her collar, and begins, behind her composed and unreadable expression, to think. Because Lady Vandra Mortevel did not raise a daughter to lose to a servant girl. Not today. Not in this hall. Not to... Chapter 3, the ceremony is over, but the castle is not sleeping. Lord Drevian sits behind his desk with a glass of wine he has not touched, and a headache he has not been able to put down, since approximately the moment Count Cassivian looked past 10 prepared noble daughters and found a servant girl instead. His quill is in his hand, his ledger is open, he is staring at neither. The knock at his door is soft, deliberate. The knock of someone who has already decided how this conversation will end before it begins. "Come in," he says. Lady Vandra Mortevel enters wearing her traveling cloak and her most pleasant expression, which is to say, the expression she wears when she wants something, and has already calculated exactly how much it will cost. She sits without being invited to. She places a small cloth purse on the corner of his desk without a word. It lands with the quiet, definitive sound of a significant amount of gold meeting wood. Drevian looks at the purse, looks at her. "Lady Mortevel," he begins carefully. "Whatever you imagine tonight's events to mean, I imagine them to mean," she says pleasantly, "that a very important man was momentarily distracted by something shiny and out of place. The way a crow is distracted." She folds her hands in her lap. Crows, Lord Drevian, return to their nests, always. They simply need to be reminded where the nest is. The Count specifically. The Count is a man. She says it without cruelty, simply as a statement of operational fact. Men notice novelty. Then they make sensible decisions. My daughter is the sensible decision. She is endorsed, prepared, noble-born, and standing in this competition exactly as the rules require. She glances at the purse. I am simply ensuring the rules continue to apply equally to everyone. Drevian is quiet for a long moment. He picks up his quill. He opens his ledger to the page that carries the names of the 10 selected candidates. He finds the entry he added earlier that evening, hastily, uncertainly, in smaller letters than the others, almost as though he knew even then it would need to be dealt with. He draws a single line through it. Then he adds 2 words beside it, in the margin, in the clipped official shorthand he uses for administrative decisions he does not want to be asked about later. He closes the ledger. Vandra stands, smooths her cloak, and picks up nothing from the desk, because she left nothing on the desk worth picking up. The purse is already Drevian's problem. My daughter looks exceptional in green, she says at the door. I trust she'll be given the appropriate consideration tomorrow. She leaves. Drevian finally drinks his wine. It does not help. The fire is low, and the room smells of old books and cold stone. Cassivian stands at the window with his hands clasped behind his back, looking out over the dark courtyard below. He has changed out of his formal blacks into something simpler, but he carries his authority the way some men carry their height, without thinking about it, without putting it down. His personal advisor, Baron Aldrich, a broad, gray-bearded man who has served the Valemore line for 30 years and survived 3 counts, stands at the desk behind him, sorting through the evening's official documentation with the experienced efficiency of someone who has long since stopped being surprised by anything. The 10 candidates. Aldrich begins, reading from the ledger copy Drevian's office delivered an hour ago. Princess Thessaly of Aranmore, Lady Fenwick of Broswell, Lady Isolde Mortevel of Selwick. Stop, Aldrich stops. There was a girl, Cassivian says, still facing the window. At the edge of the hall, gray dress. She was not in the line. A pause from Aldrich that lasts precisely 1 careful second. Serving staff, my lord. Brought in for the ceremony. Her name was Zephyrine. Another pause. Longer this time. Yes, my lord. Find out who she is. He turns from the window. His expression is calm, but there is something beneath the calm that Aldrich in 30 years has learned not to argue with. Where she is from, her family, her history, everything. My lord, the selection process is all ready. I am not asking about the selection process, Aldrich. I am asking about a person. He moves to his desk, sits, opens his own copy of the evening's notes. Those are 2 different conversations. We're having the second one. Aldrich writes it down. He does not comment. 30 years has also taught him when commenting is inadvisable. One more thing, Cassivian says, not looking up. She applied, before the ceremony. Formally. Aldrich blinks. My lord, she had an application. It was rejected at the registration office. He finally looks up. I want to know why. I want the registration officer's report on my desk before breakfast. And I want it unedited. Aldrich closes his folder. He thinks, privately and briefly, that the next few days are going to be extremely complicated. He leaves to begin finding out why. Zephyrine sits on the edge of a narrow cot in the room she shares with 4 other temporary servants, all of whom are already asleep. A single candle burns on the window ledge. Outside, the castle grounds are dark and vast and completely indifferent to the day she has just had. She is holding something. The folded application she put in her cloth pouch days ago, the one she wrote by candlelight, the one the registration officer slid back across the desk, the one she carried anyway because she did not know what else to do with it. She unfolds it now, reads her own handwriting in the low light. Name Zephyrine, 18, origin, Selwick. She reads the 3 sentences she wrote about herself. She reads them carefully, the way she read the competition announcement fully, without rushing, then she folds it again. She reaches into the very bottom of her cloth pouch, deeper than anyone who has ever searched it has ever thought to look, and she removes something else. Something that has lived in the bottom of that pouch for 4 years, since the night she turned 14, and found it hidden in the lining of the only trunk her mother left behind when she died. It is a seal, small, brass, old enough that the edges have softened with age, and on its face, pressed in the metal with the fine, deliberate craft of official document work, a crest. Not Selwick's crest, not any crest she has ever seen displayed in Selwick. A crest she looked up quietly in the back of the town hall's territorial records 2 years ago, when she finally worked up the courage to find out what she was looking at. The crest of House Varenthi, a noble house, ancient, and not just ancient, dissolved. Declared extinct by royal decree, 17 years ago, their lands absorbed into the greater Valemore territory, their bloodline officially recorded as ended. Officially. Zephyrine closes her fingers around the seal. She has told no one about this, not because she fully understands what it means. She doesn't, not yet, not entirely. But because she grew up in a house where being too much of something was always punished. And whatever this seal means, it is too much of something. She has always known that. She has always quietly been afraid of it. She blows out the candle. In the dark, she lies back on the narrow cot and stares at the ceiling of a castle she was brought to as a servant. She does not know yet that Cassivian is across this same castle, asking questions about her. She does not know yet that the name Varenthi is carved into the eastern wall of this very castle, in the Hall of Allied Houses, among the noble crests commemorated at Valemore's founding. She does not know yet what her mother knew and kept and hid in the lining of a trunk. She only knows she is tired, and that for one strange, unplanned, unrepeatable moment today, a man looked at her, properly looked at her, and asked her name. She falls asleep holding the seal. The second day of the selection begins with a formal breakfast presentation, each candidate seated at the long ceremonial table, each one performing grace and wit and effortless charm for Cassivian's benefit, while Lord Drevian observes and notes and tries to steer the room back toward the order he spent 2 years constructing. Isolde is seated third from the Count's right, a placement Vandra secured through a separate, smaller conversation with the seating official last night. She is wearing ivory today, perfectly chosen. She speaks when spoken to and laughs beautifully, and once leans forward to make a point about the eastern trade routes that she memorized from a pamphlet Vandra made her read 4 times. Cassivian is polite, he is engaged, he asks questions and listens to the answers, but he keeps glancing at the doorway. Drivian notices, his neck tightens by a fraction. Princess Thessaly notices too from across the table and files it away with the sharp, quiet intelligence she hides behind her rehearsed angle and her sapphire gown. Isolde does not notice yet. She is in the middle of the trade route point. She has practiced it. She is going to finish it. Zéphirine is carrying a basket of folded linen toward the upper guest rooms when the footsteps behind her stop her. Zéphirine of Selwick, she turns. Baron Aldrich stands in the corridor looking at her with the expression of a man who has been given an unusual task and is professional enough not to show how unusual he finds it. He is holding a small card. "The Count," he says carefully, "requests the pleasure of your company this afternoon, the Eastern Garden, informally." He holds out the card. Zéphirine looks at it. Looks at him. "I am serving staff," she says. "Yes," Aldrich agrees. "I am not a candidate. I was told, officially, that I am disqualified." "Yes," Aldrich agrees again in the same tone. And yet, he extends the card a fraction further. She takes it. She looks at it for a long moment. It is formal. It has Cassivian's personal seal at the bottom, different from the official Valemore seal, smaller, used only for personal correspondence. She knows this because she spent time in the records room. She knows a great many things she has never had any use for until now. "The Eastern Garden," she says, "this afternoon." At the third bell, Aldrich confirms. He gives her a small, stiff bow, the kind that is entirely correct in execution and entirely bewildering in context, given that she is holding a basket of linen, and walks away. Zéphirine stands in the corridor holding a formal invitation from the Count of Valemore. Somewhere above her, through the ceiling in the grand hall, she can faintly hear Lord Drevian guiding the breakfast presentation back on course. Somewhere in Selwick, if she could see through stone and distance, Lady Vondra Mordevel is at this moment sending a second message to Lord Drevian, a reminder, a tightening of terms. And somewhere in the bottom of Zéphirine's cloth pouch against the folded application and the worn cloth lining, a small brass seal sits quietly in the dark, waiting the way secrets wait. For the moment someone finally asks the right question. Chapter 4. The Eastern Garden is the quietest part of the castle grounds. No fountains performing for visitors, no manicured hedges shaped into impressions of grandeur. Just old stone paths, climbing roses that have been growing so long they have opinions about where they go, and a single iron bench beneath a broad oak that has clearly outlasted several generations of Valemore counts without losing any sleep over it. Cassivian is already there when Zéphirine arrives. He is sitting on the bench without ceremony, no advisors, no guards, within visible distance, jacket collar open, looking at nothing in particular, with the relaxed expression of a man who has spent all morning performing authority and is quietly relieved to put it down for an hour. He stands when he sees her, without hesitation. It is such a simple thing, such a completely ordinary act of courtesy. And yet Zéphirine, who has carried trays into rooms full of nobles, without a single one of them acknowledging her existence, stops walking for just a fraction of a second when he does it. She recovers, continues forward, stops at a respectful distance. "You came," he says. "You asked," she says. Something about the simplicity of that exchange makes him almost smile. He gestures to the bench. She sits. He sits. The oak above them does nothing dramatic. The roses continue having opinions. He does not begin with flattery. She will remember this later, that he did not begin with flattery. "You applied," he says, "before the ceremony, formally." She looks at him. "You know that. I have the registration officer's report. Your application was rejected for lack of noble endorsement." A pause. "You came anyway, as a servant." Yes, he studies her. Why? She is quiet for a moment. Not the performed quiet of the women at the breakfast table, the real kind, where a person is actually deciding how honest to be. "I wanted to see it," she says finally. "The hall. The competition. What it looked like when the world decides who is worth choosing." She looks at her hands briefly. "I've spent a long time wondering what that looks like from the inside, and it looks exactly like it does from the outside," she says. He is quiet for a moment. Then he says they rejected your application because of endorsement, not because of anything you wrote. "I know why they rejected it. Do you know it was wrong?" She looks at him directly for the first time since she sat down. There is something in her eyes that is not anger and is not softness. It is the particular steadiness of someone who has decided, at some point they cannot exactly remember, that the truth is the only thing worth the energy of saying. "I know a great many things that are wrong," she says. "Knowing doesn't change them." Cassivian leans forward slightly, elbows on knees, looking at her the way he looked at her across the hall, like she is the only still thing in a moving room. What if it could? She does not answer that, but she does not look away. Isolde finds out the way vicious people always find out, through someone who thought telling her would be entertaining. One of the other candidates, Lady Marvith of Oswick, mentions it with the particular brightness of a woman who has nothing personal against Isolde, but a great deal of personal interest in seeing her disadvantaged. The Count is in the Eastern Garden, she says, adjusting her bracelet, with the servant girl. They've been there since the third bell. She watches Isolde's face, gets exactly what she came for. Isolde does not go to her mother first. That is how you know she is genuinely furious, because Isolde always goes to her mother first, for everything, for her whole life. But this she takes personally. This bypasses strategy entirely and goes straight to something hot and unmanageable in her chest that she has felt, if she is honest, since the moment Cassivian walked past her in the hall without slowing down. She finds Zephyrin returning from the garden alone, taking the servant's path back along the castle's eastern wall. Stop. Zephyrin stops. Turns. Isolde is standing at the end of the path with two of the other candidates flanking her. Not because she asked them to come, but because cruelty, like warmth, attracts company. She looks at Zephyrin for a long moment, up and down. The gray uniform, the natural hair, the complete absence of everything Isolde's mother spent months constructing and curating and paying for. I want you to understand something, Isolde says. Her voice is quiet, controlled. She has her mother's gift for making venom sound like reason. Whatever you think happened in that garden, whatever he said to you, whatever you imagined it meant, you are a servant. You were brought here to carry things. And when this week is over, you will go back to carrying things. That is what you are. Zephyrin says nothing. Do you understand me? Isolde steps closer. You grew up in my house. You ate from our kitchen and slept under our roof, and you were nobody there, and you are nobody here, and the sooner you understand that. Isolde. Zephyrin says it quietly, not unkindly. The way you say someone's name when you want them to hear the next thing clearly. Your green dress was beautiful yesterday, she says. You worked very hard. Your mother worked very hard. I hope it is enough. She walks past her. It is the most devastating thing she could have said, and they both know it. Isolde stands on the path and watches her go and feels, for the first time in her 17 years, completely outclassed by someone in a gray dress. She gets asked to find her mother. Vandra is already there. Of course she is. Drevian is behind his desk, trying to look like a man in control of the situation, and achieving at best the impression of a man who was recently in control of a different situation. Vandra stands at the window. She does not turn around when Isolde enters. She met with him, Isolde says, in the garden. For over an hour. I know, Isolde. Then do something. Isolde's voice cracks slightly at the edges. She pulls it back, her mother's training kicking in, but the crack was there and all three of them heard it. You were paid to manage this, so manage it. Vandra turns from the window. She looks at her daughter for a moment with the complex expression of a woman who loves her child completely and is also, always, primarily calculating. Lord Drevian, she says. The girl is disqualified. She has no standing on these grounds beyond her serving duties. Serving duties, which she tilts her head slightly, I believe concluded this morning. Drevian picks up his quill, sets it down, picks it up again. You want her removed from the estate. I want the rules applied, Vandra says, consistently, as they were always meant to be. Two of Drevian's official stewards find Zephyrin in the courtyard folding linens with the other temporary staff. They are polite about it, formal even. One of them holds a document. The other holds nothing but the particular expression of a man performing an unpleasant task with professional efficiency. Zephyrin of Selwick, the first steward says, by order of the selection organizer, your serving contract for this event has been concluded effective immediately. Your belongings should be collected from the servants' quarters, and you are to vacate the castle grounds before the evening bell. The other servants around her go very still and very quiet. Zephyrin looks at the document. She does not reach for it. On what grounds, she asks. Administrative restructuring of serving staff. She almost smiles at that, almost. Administrative restructuring, she repeats, in the same tone one might use for a phrase that deserves to be heard twice. If you'll collect your things, that will not be necessary. The voice comes from behind the stewards. Both of them turn. Lord Edric Varenthi is not an impressive figure at first glance. He is perhaps 60 thin in the way of men who were once broader and have had difficulty taken out of them steadily over many years. His clothing is good but old, the clothing of someone who owns quality things and has stopped being able to replace them. He walks with a cane he clearly does not entirely need, the way men carry things that remind them of who they used to be. He was invited to Valemore as a courtesy. A minor, aging, disgraced former noble, stripped of his lands 17 years ago when House Varenthi was dissolved, kept at the fringes of society since then through a combination of old connections and careful invisibility. He has been at this castle for 2 days. He has seen Zephyrin twice, once at the ceremony, once crossing the eastern corridor. Both times he stopped walking. Both times he said nothing. Now he is standing in the servants' courtyard, leaning on his unnecessary cane, looking at her with an expression that is not quite recognition and is not quite grief, but sits exactly in the space between them. "Leave her," he says to the stewards. "I will speak with Lord Drivian myself regarding this matter." The stewards look at each other. Edric Varenthi carries no official weight in this castle. He carries no official weight anywhere. He is on paper nobody. But he says it with the absolute unhurried certainty of a man who was born knowing how rooms work. And both stewards, trained in the physics of authority without fully understanding them, take a half step back without meaning to. "Sir, the order comes directly from, I said leave her, they leave." The courtyard empties quickly, the other servants finding reasons to be elsewhere, with the practiced efficiency of people who have learned that proximity to conflict has consequences. Edric Varenthi turns to Zephyrin. He looks at her for a long moment. His eyes move over her face with the slow, careful attention of someone reading something they thought they would never see again. "Your mother," he says finally. His voice is rougher than before. "What was her name?" Zeph goes very still. "Seraphine," she says. Something moves across his face, fast, deep, gone before it fully arrives. "Seraphine Varenthi," he says, question. Zephyrin reaches into her cloth pouch. Her fingers find the seal without looking. They have always known where it is. She holds it out on her open palm. Edric looks at it. He looks at it for a very long time. Then this man, this former lord, this stripped and diminished and carefully invisible man, takes his cane in his left hand, straightens to his full height, and lowers himself to one knee on the cold stone of the servants' courtyard. With complete, unambiguous deliberateness. "My lady," he says quietly. The evening bell begins to ring across the castle grounds. Zephyrin stands in her gray dress in the fading light, a brass seal on her open palm, and feels the ground shift beneath her in a way that has nothing to do with the stone she is standing on. She stares at the man kneeling before her, and for the first time in her life, she has absolutely no idea what to do with being seen. Chapter 5. The hall has never looked more prepared for something to go wrong. Every candle is lit, every surface polished. The 10 noble daughters stand in their final formation. Gowns pressed, expressions composed, 2 days of competition distilled into this single, decisive moment. The court has gathered in full. Officials, dignitaries, minor nobles, invited guests, everyone who is anyone in the 5 kingdoms has found a reason to be standing in this room today. Lord Drevian opens the ceremony with a speech he has been writing for 6 months. It is excellent. Nobody is listening to it. They are watching the door. Zephyrin is not in the hall. She is in the servants' corridor outside it, still in her gray dress, her back against the cold stone wall, the brass seal warm in her closed fist. Edric Varenthi stands beside her, upright, quiet, with the expression of a man who has been waiting 17 years for a morning he was not sure would ever come. "You don't have to go in," he says. "I know," she says, "but you're going in." She looks at the door. Beyond it, she can hear Drevian's voice rising toward his conclusion, the shuffle of the assembled court, the particular charged silence of a room full of people, pretending they are not desperate to see what happens next. "My mother kept this seal hidden for 18 years, Zephyrin says. "She never told me what it meant. She never told me anything." A pause. "Why?" Edric is quiet for a moment. "Because she knew that what you carry can either protect you or destroy you, depending entirely on who is in the room when it comes to light." He looks at her. "Today you get to choose the room." Zephyrin uncurls her fist, looks at the seal one last time. Then she pushes open the door and walks in. She enters from the side. Nobody announces her. Nobody needs to. The room notices her the way rooms notice things that were not accounted for. A ripple, a shift, heads turning in sequence like a slow wave moving from the door toward the front of the hall. The 10 noble daughters feel it before they see it. Isolde sees it and goes rigid. Vandra, standing in the family gallery, sees it and reaches for the railing. Lord Drivian sees it and stops speaking mid-sentence. Cassivian, seated at the ceremonial chair at the head of the hall, sees it and sits forward. Drivian recovers first. He has, after all, been managing inconvenient situations his entire career. This ceremony, he announces loudly, stepping forward, is restricted to approved candidates and invited guests. The serving staff are not. She is not serving staff. Edric Varenthi walks in behind her. He walks differently than he has walked for 17 years, without the careful smallness, without the practiced invisibility. He walks into the grand hall of Valemore Castle like a man who was born knowing how to enter rooms like this. Because he was, and because he has decided that today he is done pretending otherwise. The room recognizes him before it remembers why it should. Whispers begin, quiet, confused, rapidly becoming less quiet and less confused. Lord Varenthi Drevian starts. Former Lord, Edric says pleasantly. Yes, I am aware of my status, thank you. He stops in the center of the hall and addresses not Drevian but the room, the full court, the officials, the dignitaries, every witness this moment requires. I am also aware of hers. He gestures to Zephyrin. This is Zephyrin Varenthi, daughter of Seraphine Varenthi, née of House Varenthi, the bloodline declared extinct by decree 17 years ago. He declared extinct, not extinguished. There is a difference, as it turns out, and she is standing in front of you. The hall erupts, not loudly, worse than loudly. It erupts in the way of people who are too well-bred to shout and too shocked to maintain the performance of composure. A collective fracture, spreading across the room in whispers and sharp intakes of breath, and the sound of people leaning toward each other with urgent, disbelieving faces. Lord Drevian turns the color of old chalk, because he understands in this moment, with the clarity available only to men watching their careful constructions collapse in real time, exactly what this means. House Varenthi's dissolved lands were absorbed into Valemore territory, which means a living Varenthi heir does not simply have noble standing. A living Varenthi heir has a claim. On these very grounds, his ledger, his neat margin note, disqualified. Ineligible, he disqualified a Varenthi from a Valemore selection. He drew a line through her name with a bribed quill while her family crest sat carved into the eastern wall of this castle 40 feet from his office. He looks at Vandra in the gallery. Vandra is no longer holding the railing. She has taken a small, quiet step backward, then another. The expression on her face is the expression of a woman rapidly recalculating every decision she has made in the past 72 hours and finding the mathematics catastrophically wrong. Isolde looks at her mother. Her mother does not look back. That, more than anything else that has happened in this hall today, is what breaks Isolde's composure. Not the revelation, not the crowd, not Cassivian sitting forward in his chair looking at Zephyrin. Her mother not looking back. She looks down at her hands, the perfectly manicured, carefully prepared, endlessly rehearsed hands. The green dress, the pearls. She has spent her entire life being prepared for a room. She is standing in the room, and none of it, not one single carefully constructed piece of it, is enough. She steps out of the line, no announcement, no drama. She simply steps back, out of formation, out of the ceremony, and walks toward the side exit with her chin level and her eyes bright and her whole performance finally quietly over. Nobody stops her. Nobody calls her back. Vandra watches her go. Then she straightens her collar, turns, and follows her daughter out. The hall settles into a heavy, waiting silence. Lord Drevian stands in the center of it, looking like a man who would very much like to be somewhere else, but understands that leaving would be worse than staying. Cassivian stands. He has not spoken since Zephyrin entered the room. He has watched everything, the revelation, the eruption, Drevian's collapse, Vandra's retreat, with the focused stillness of a man who processes the world by watching it fully before he responds to it. He steps down from the ceremonial platform. He walks across the hall. The crowd parts. Of course it does. He stops in front of Zephyrin. She looks up at him. She is still holding the seal. Her chin is level. Her hands are steady. She is the same girl who carried water up a hill before sunrise, who sat in a line she was not supposed to join, who wrote 3 sentences about herself by candlelight with the last of a borrowed pen. She is also, as of approximately 4 minutes ago, the last living heir of House Varenthi. She is both of those things at once, and she is not sure yet what to do with either of them. You knew, she says quietly. Before Edric spoke, you already knew. Aldrich found the records yesterday, he says. I was going to tell you in the garden. You didn't give me the chance. You could have told Drevian, announced it properly, made it official before the ceremony. I could have, he agrees. But it wasn't my secret to announce. It was yours. A pause. I wanted you to choose what to do with it. She looks at him for a long moment. And the selection, she asks. Your 10 noble brides? He glances briefly, almost imperceptibly, at the remaining 9 women in the line. All of them perfectly still, perfectly silent, watching this conversation with the collective expression of people witnessing something they will be describing for the rest of their lives. Then he looks back at her, and in front of the full court of Valemore, in front of every official and dignitary and invited guest, in front of Lord Drevian and his ruined ledger and his red sash, he says the only thing he has wanted to say since he walked into this hall 2 days ago and found the only still thing in a room full of motion. Give me the girl they call Black. The hall is silent. Completely. The kind of silent that has weight. Then Zephyrin does something nobody in the room expects. She doesn't say yes. She looks at him, this man who walked past 10 kingdoms for her, who asked Aldrich to find her history, who let her carry her own secret to its own moment, and she says, quietly and with complete seriousness, I will need time. He blinks. Once. He repeats, I have spent 18 years being invisible in other people's stories, she says. I would like a moment to decide if I want to be in mine. The silence in the hall reaches a new astonished depth. Cassivian looks at her. And then, for the first time fully, without the almost, he smiles. Take all the time you need, he says. I am not going anywhere. Zephyrin turns. She looks at the hall, at the court, the candles, the carved crests on the eastern wall, the space where Isolde's green dress used to stand. She looks at Edric Varenthi, who is watching her with quiet, patient, 17 years in the making pride. She looks down at the brass seal in her hand, her mother's secret, her mother's gift. The thing that was always too much of something for a girl in a gray dress, in a town that did not want to see her. She closes her fingers around it. She lifts her head. She walks toward the door, not running, not performing, not carrying anyone's tray, simply walking the way a woman walks when she has, finally, for the first time, decided that the next room she enters will be one she chose.